As the morning mist slowly clears over the yellow lands of China, a voice from thousands of years ago still echoes. The path to true wisdom lies first in self-knowledge. These words epitomize the legacy of Confucius, one of the most influential thinkers in human history. He was not only a philosopher, but also a teacher, a statesman, a moral guide, and a sage who shaped the very soul of Chinese civilization. Inspiring emperors, scholars, ordinary people, and even modern thinkers for centuries, Confucius profoundly influenced not only China, but all of East Asian culture with his life and teachings. His legacy is still felt across a land stretching from Japan to Korea, from Vietnam to Malaysia. Let us delve into the dusty pages of time and embark on a journey into the life, ideas, and the impact he left on the collective conscience of humanity. Confucius was born in 551 BC in the Chinese state of Lu. At that time, China was in an era of political fragmentation and civil wars, known as the Spring and Autumn period. The weakening of central authority led to the constant conflict between small feudal lords, and order gave way to chaos. Confucius was born into this world. He lost his father at a young age and grew up in poverty. However, this poverty did not extinguish his burning desire for learning. At a young age, he developed a keen interest in ancient texts, ancestral tales, and ancient rituals. He was constantly reading, discussing, and reflecting. For him, knowledge was not merely an individual virtue, but the cornerstone of the rebuilding of society. In his youth, he served in various government positions, working menial jobs ranging from warehouse manager to herdsman. These positions afforded him the opportunity to closely observe the daily lives of the people. Over time, he rose to higher positions and served as a consultant. But his true goal was to re-establish not only individuals, but the entire society based on virtue and justice. Confucius, opposing the corrupt governance of the time, argued that virtuous rulers should govern the people with justice. In his view, a good leader was one who led his people by example, not fear. This understanding later became one of the cornerstones of Confucianism as the idea of virtuous governance or humane kingship. However, his ideas were not widely accepted during his lifetime. Many princes and rulers refused to listen to his advice and even viewed him as a threat. Therefore, Confucius left Lu and traveled throughout China for years. He traveled from kingdom to kingdom, explaining his ideas, debating, and trying to persuade. He often faced hunger, exclusion, and danger. But he never gave up. For him, spreading his ideas was more important than short-term success. The true sage pursues righteousness, not success, he said. These years of wandering further matured his thoughts and transformed them into a universal moral understanding. Confucius's teachings placed morality at the core of human relationships. He believed that society should be built on the bonds of respect, loyalty, and love between individuals. He placed great emphasis on 5 fundamental relationships: ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, brother and sister, and friend and friend. Mutual responsibility and hierarchy in these relationships were the fundamental principles that ensured social order. The concept of Ren, or humanness, was at the heart of Confucian philosophy. Ren meant empathy for the suffering of others, empathy, and the adoption of kindness as a fundamental value. Another key concept was Li, rituals, etiquette, and appropriate forms of social behavior. According to Confucius, people would regulate their behavior by adhering to Li, purify their hearts with Ren, and thus achieve both individual and social harmony. These ideas guided not only individual morality, but also state governance. Confucius argued that rather than instilling fear through laws, rulers should set an example for the people through virtuous behavior. A good ruler, he argued, should be just, compassionate toward the poor, and act with knowledge and moderation. Thus, the people would obey him out of respect, not fear. This understanding also inspired the imperial examinations, China's bureaucratic system that lasted for millennia. Officials should rise not only through nobility, but also through knowledge and virtue. This idea gave rise to the concept of meritocracy in society. The final years of Confucius's life were dedicated to his students. He returned to Lu and founded a small school. Until then, education had been the privilege of the nobility. Confucius, however, believed that education should be accessible to all. Therefore, he accepted students of all abilities, from all walks of life. He imparted not only rote knowledge, but also moral thinking, critical reason, and a sense of social responsibility. His teachings taught that knowledge was not merely intellectual, but also character-based. Knowing is not enough, he declared. Unless one applies what one knows, one cannot attain wisdom. This approach laid the foundation for the traditions in China that viewed education not merely as a vocational tool, but as a means of character development. Confucius died in 479 BC, at the age of 72. For most of his life, his ideas were ignored and rejected. However, after his death, his students compiled his words into a work called the Lunyu, or Analects. This book became China's fundamental moral guide for centuries. During the Han Dynasty, Confucianism was made the official ideology and formed the basis of the imperial examinations. In other words, Confucius's ideas not only gained acceptance after his death, but also became a cornerstone of Chinese statehood and culture. Today, Confucius is remembered not only as a Chinese philosopher, but as a universal sage. His teachings remind us that morality, education, respect, and responsibility are universal values. Even in the chaos of the modern world, his words, "Do not do to others what you would not want done to you," continue to resonate. Confucius taught that to change the world, one must first begin with oneself. For him, true reform begins in the heart. The virtue of an individual can transform a family. The virtue of a family can transform a society. And the virtue of a society can transform the entire world. And perhaps that is why Confucius's quiet but unwavering voice still rings in our ears. Even thousands of years later, his teachings live on not only in ancient books, but in every moment of daily life. Traces of his legacy are hidden in a teacher's compassionate approach to his student, a ruler's just decision-making, and a child's respect for his parents. Confucius reminds us that the pursuit of wisdom is endless, that humanity is a lifelong learner, seeker, and self-improvement. Confucius was a philosopher of not a single age, but of all time. And perhaps true immortality lies in the continued resonance of ideas in the conscience of humanity. His was the same, lost to eternity, yet never lost.
The Door to Knowledge, presented by Toyer TV. Don't forget to take your place on this path of discovery and enlightenment.